What's going on, Radiant Youth? My name is Sam Canchola, and my wife Aslan and I are your Central Youth Pastors here at Radiant Church. And today, I'm excited to continue our series on Crazy Faith, where we're walking through 5 unique stories of faith in the book of Mark and discovering how to believe even when it feels hard. Which makes me think of this one time it was really hard for me to have faith. I was around 8th grade, going in my first winter camp. We were in these kind of like big charter buses, kind of like the ones we take for summer camp, except instead of driving through the big open roads, we were driving through mountains. And I don't mean just like big road mountains. I mean like the type of mountains where only one car can barely fit around a corner, let alone a 50-passenger charter bus. And so here I am, little 8th grader Sam, on my first church winter camp, excited about going to the snow, when all of a sudden we get to this part of the mountain where the bus needed to inch its way around the corner. Like full on, slow reverse 1 inch and slow forward another, all while being on the edge of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And at this moment, I am scared for my life. And I'm just thinking, man, I wanted to learn about Jesus. I'm not trying to meet him. And the bus was just creaking, girls were screaming, even the high school guys were silent. That's how you know it was scary. Now, obviously, I survived the drive and I made it through, but I'll never forget how hard it was to trust God in that moment. I mean, it was so hard to have faith when I didn't have anything really to hold on to, and everyone I looked at looked terrified as well. And I think we'd all agree, it's way easier to have faith when we can see or feel confidence or comfortability. But what about when we don't? What about when moments when we're afraid, nervous, or even just lacking faith? This morning, I believe Scripture is going to show how we can believe in Jesus even when we lack faith. Because here's what Jesus told the disciples in John. He said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." You see, Jesus was talking about us, those of us who didn't walk alongside him or were even alive when he was alive. And what this first passage means for us today is that Jesus recognizes that it takes a lot of faith for those of us who can still believe in him even without seeing him. And those that do, they are blessed. But let's look at a moment when the disciples had a moment of lacking faith. Now keep in mind, these are the disciples, the ones who saw Jesus in the flesh. Yes, even they had moments of lacking faith. And at this point in Mark, the disciples had already seen Jesus lead people through some crazy faith, miraculous moments. Yet still, the disciples had a moment they lacked faith. And that's a feeling I think we all can relate with at some point in our lives. So let's check it out in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. And Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. And so the disciples, they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." This was a moment where the disciples forgot who Jesus was and the protection he offered. They panicked and questioned Jesus in the process. Except what's important to notice is that Jesus didn't get offended with their panic or their lack of faith. Instead, he went and silenced the storm. He taught them at that very moment that he was worthy of their faith and that they can have faith in him and that he can do what he says he's going to do. Which leads us to the bottom line of today's message. Jesus isn't afraid of your lack of faith. He is God in the flesh and can command the wind and the waves to obey him. That's a lot of power, y'all. And so when he sees that we lack faith, He maintains his power while still being confident he can teach you to have faith. So how do we apply this to our lives? Let's fast forward in scripture to another moment with Jesus and his disciples in Mark chapter 9. He says, "A man in the crowd answered, 'Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not.'" And this is how Jesus responds. "You unbelieving generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." And so they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If you can," said Jesus, "everything is possible for one who believes." And immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." That last part, help me overcome my unbelief. You see, this story has a powerful paradox that can help us understand the tension of having a lot of faith and lacking faith. And the boy's father prays, "Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief." And this prayer captures the heart of where many people struggle in their walk with Jesus. It's like we believe in Jesus and we do trust him, but there are moments when we struggle to have faith or understand. And it's the times where we have to believe without being able to see that causes us to respond in unbelief. And so this prayer, though, it shows us that we can have faith even in the midst of struggling to believe. And so pray this prayer when you struggle to have faith in Jesus. It's okay to ask Jesus to help you believe. And the way we do this is by praying, "Lord, I believe, but help me in the areas of my unbelief." This prayer is a game changer, and I'm so excited for you to try this prayer this week. Your life is never going to be the same. And so, Radiant Youth, it's been great sharing today's message with you, and I hope you have your best Sunday yet.